I remember how I felt the day before I started the carnivore diet. I was literally sitting around the house waiting to die. Everything is so much better today that there is no amount of money that would make me stop the carnivore diet. Even if you told me that the carnivore diet is going to kill me and I'm only going to live for another 3 weeks, I will take those 3 weeks feeling the way I feel today than another 3 or 4 or 10 years of how I felt 2 years ago.
Bob, how did you find carnivore?
Well, I was sitting down in North Carolina a couple of winters ago because I live in a 5x10 cargo trailer in the wintertime because I don't like Nebraska winters. And I was parked, you know, less than 10 minutes from some of the most beautiful beaches on the world, and I had not seen them. I was watching YouTube videos, which is basically what I did, sit around my trailer watching YouTube videos. And one day this video pops up from Dante Ferrigno. His channel is called Ferrigno's Freedom. And it said 125 days on the lion diet or something like that. I didn't know what the heck the lion diet was, but I was curious because I had always been really fat thanks to all of the other problems that I had. And I did not realize what it was when I clicked on it, but very quickly I realized, oh, this is just a more extreme version of, a ketogenic diet, a meat heavy diet, which I'd heard of, but I couldn't do because I had gout. And I'd been told for my entire life that what caused gout was eating too much meat. So I had avoided it as much as possible. Um, but because I'd watched that video, it then presented me with another video by this strange country doctor from the middle of Tennessee that spoke kind of funny because he's from Appalachia, but his name was Dr. Ken Berry. And I watched a couple of his videos and like, yeah, this all sounds really great, but I can't do that because I have gout. I noticed he was going live that night. So it must have been a Monday because he's been doing his Monday night lives forever. And I thought, well, what the heck? I'll go check him out live. So I got there, about 10 minutes before he went live, and there were already a couple of thousand people in the room waiting. It's like, oh, great. This guy's huge. I'm never going to get a question answered. But because I was there, I went over to the chat and typed in, I have gout. I can't do the standard version of this diet. Is there a version of this diet I can do? And if I'd known it was going to be so successful, I would have written the girl's name down. I do remember that it was a girl. So it was either Paola or Mitzi that sent back a message. Gout is not caused by meat. Go search Dr. Berry gout and watch those videos. And I'm thinking to myself, what do you mean gout's not caused by meat? I've known as fact for 40 years that gout is caused by meat. But I went out and I watched his video and it made sense, but it's like, no, this just can't be right. So I watched a few more of his videos and then I made the decision, okay, well, I can barely stand for a couple of minutes without severe pain now. So the worst that could happen to me is that eating a bunch of meat is going to kill me. So I decided to make the switch. Now, I was on my way to my sister's house and didn't want to have to call her up and say, well, I know you've already gone shopping, but I'm going to change my diet. So you have to go shopping again. So I decided I'll be getting home on May the 8th, traveling from North Carolina via Ohio to get back to Nebraska. So on May the 9th, the day before my 59th birthday, I went carnivore. Now, I now know that that's a mistake. In listening to Professor K and some others, I suggest a slow transition from any one diet to any other diet, regardless of whether you're going to keto or carnivore or whatever. Even if you're going to the vegan diet from a standard American diet, you should transition slowly because that upsets your gut. But I jumped right in and had the usual bathroom issues, but the rest, as they say, is history. That is how I found the carnivore diet. Purely by accident. I don't know why YouTube put Dante Ferrigno's video in front of me. I have often said that I believe it was God reaching into my computer and saying, "You really need to see this," because I've always been a travel, tourism, photography, off grid life kind of a consumer on YouTube. I'd never watched any health or wellness stuff before. So I have no idea why this video showed up on my feed, but there it was, and that's what led to it all.
And so the gout just started to go away.
Oh, everything changed. Absolutely everything changed. I had suffered for 40 years. I was kicked out of the military in 1983 because I had gout and suffered with it every time I tried to get a little more in shape. I'd have another setback because we knew as fact at that time that all you had to do if you wanted to lose weight and get healthier was to eat less and move more. That's what we knew. That was fact. But it never worked. And when I started the carnivore diet, like I said, I could barely stand for a couple of minutes without severe pain. And because I was taking 13 pills in the morning and 9 at night, plus pain pills throughout the day, I thought that if I could get to the point where I could stand for just 5 minutes a day at a time without having to sit back down, that would greatly improve my life, just trying to double the amount of time I could stand. And it's been so much better than that. Well, let's see here. My type 2 diabetes is gone. My fatty liver disease is gone. My chronic kidney disease is gone. My spinal stenosis is about 98% better. I still have to be careful when I turn here and there because my spinal column is still narrowed. And if I turn too quickly the wrong way, I do get some pain from that. My arthritis is 95, 96, maybe even 98% better. My hands are still a little stiff sometimes after if I haven't been doing anything with them. But back when I first started the carnivore diet, this was about the there we go. This was about the best fist I could make. And now, as you can see, my hands work just fine. Um, my gout, I have not had, after having 3 to 4 major gout attacks a year for my entire life, plus lots of little ones, I have not had a single gout attack since starting the carnivore diet. And just as a side effect, I lost 155 pounds that first year. So yeah, I would have to say everything's gotten a little bit better.
That's amazing. And all of those things. So you had some heart issues or some heart disease related things, yeah?
Oh yes, I one of the things that I had happened to me is I had a triple bypass surgery about 6.5 years ago now. So I was 3.5, 4 years post op when I found the carnivore diet. And my cardiologist was skeptical to say the least, but he had at least heard of keto and didn't have anything bad to say about keto. But he said, let's be careful. Now, I need to talk about this just a little bit here, Dave, because after my heart surgery, my ejection fraction, which if you want to know the technical ins and outs of it, it's a gauge for how well your heart is pumping blood. And if your ejection fraction is 30 or lower, then you are considered to be in full blown heart failure. When I got out of the hospital from my triple bypass surgery, my ejection fraction was 37. So not quite the heart failure level, but not what you'd call great. Then about a year later, it was up. It was up to about 40, and it stayed at around 40 the whole time. Now, 65 to 70 is considered a normal ejection fraction, and mine was staying at around 40. After my first year of carnivore, my ejection fraction jumped up to about 46, which was a really big improvement. It hadn't improved that much in the previous 3 years following my dietitian's advice on how to eat post triple bypass. Then just recently, it's been about a month and a half ago now, I went to the cardiologist because while I don't go to normal doctors anymore, I don't see the point in it. I do still go to a cardiology appointment once a year. Now, when I had first gotten out of the hospital, he said, I'm going to see you every 6 months until one of us dies. And a year ago, when I saw him, he said, You're doing fantastic. I'll see you in a year. And then this year, my ejection fraction had gone up again. And I now have a normal ejection fraction. Now, I don't know if you know what a CAC score is, but that's where they scan your heart and look for calcifications and all that stuff. And I obviously have a very bad CAC score. I've had a triple bypass surgery. I have heart disease. I have calcifications. And normally, as I understand it, and listening to, Dr. Barry and Dr. Baker and Dr. Fung and all of the Dr. Paul Mason and all the others that I listen to, normally out in the general public, once you have a CAC score that isn't zero, it normally progresses about 10% per year. So that eventually you have to get more heart surgery because things just keep clogging up and getting worse. That's the normal. This year, at my cardiology appointment, my CAC score went down. Now, it didn't go down very much. It was only about 9 points, so that's not a huge drop. But considering it did not go up the 10% that normally happens when you have a CAC score, that's a really big deal. So, what I would like to say right now to anybody that's watching this that believes the tripe out there about how saturated fat is bad for your heart, I'm here to tell you with lab results proof that saturated fat is not only not bad for your heart, it helps your heart. My heart is healthier today than it was in who knows how long. Like I said, I had triple bypass surgery about 6.5 years ago now. And I, of course, didn't have any numbers prior to that because I didn't realize I was sick. As most people that have heart attacks, which I didn't have a heart attack, I just wasn't feeling good. And that whole story led to a triple bypass. But I never actually had a heart attack. But I was about 1% from dying, just flat out dying, because I had two arteries that were 100% blocked and a third one that was 99% blocked. I was 1% blockage away from just dying. My cardiologist said, Bob, you're not going to have a heart attack. You're just going to keel over dead if we don't do this surgery. So I did the surgery, and that's what has happened since. So every time you see one of these people get on whatever platform they're talking from and say, oh, saturated fat is bad for you. Saturated fat will cause heart disease. It's going to clog up your arteries. It's going to do all of the things that they say it's going to do. I'm here to tell you that that is false. My heart has gotten so much better since starting the carnivore diet. It's ridiculous. When I started carnivore, I was literally sitting around the house waiting to die because I couldn't move, I couldn't stand, I couldn't do any of that stuff. And I knew that my heart was going to just keep getting worse. Well, now, guess what? My heart has not only gotten better, it has gotten significantly better. And I feel so much better. Instead of sitting around the house waiting to die, as you can see there underneath my name, I've added off-grid carnivore to my name. And that yellow square you see behind me is a chunk of desert that I bought. And I'm moving there in less than a month to start living off-grid and building my own homestead out of my own little slice of the desert. So take that, all you people that say saturated fat is bad for you.
So, firstly, congratulations. That's an awesome result. I'd love to know your thoughts, though, on why we got here. So, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind, and probably to a lot of people's mind, is the demonization of saturated fat is just about money, because there's no money in people being healthy. There's no money in there's just no money in it. Maybe the recommendations and the way food is marketed and the way pharmaceuticals have been designed initially was done in a way that was like, well, we need to do something, we need to fix something. People are starting to die of heart attacks. But now it's just like, well, we're making all this money. If we can't suddenly turn around and say, oh, hang on, we were wrong. What's your feeling about that?
Yeah, well, to truly understand how we got here, I believe we have to go back to the sugar companies and a man by the name of Ansel Keys. He was given money by the sugar industry to promote his research. Now, I'm not saying there was anything underhanded about it. I do not know that. However, I can tell you with absolute certainty that 3 Harvard scientists were paid off to promote the fact that it was not sugar causing heart disease, but it was saturated fat. The sugar companies paid to have the problems shifted to saturated fat. Basically, what the tobacco companies did as well in trying to say, oh, it's not the tobacco, it's this, it's the other thing. Sugar did the same thing, saying, no, 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 it's not the sugar, it's the saturated fat. But now it's gotten to the point where everybody is making so much money off of all of it. I mean, we could go into talking about how the tobacco companies actually own big food now. And all of the mass produced food is owned by like 5 or 6 companies. And those same food companies fund all of the research that they pump into doctors' offices. And they actually fund the big medical groups, and they own the medical insurance companies as well. So it's a great big circle of life, if you will. The sugar companies and the food companies poison the people. The people get sick, they go to their doctor, and the doctor has all of this so called research to tell them how to treat the problems. And it's just one big circle of everybody making money at every turn. But when you turn around and dig down through it, it's the sugar companies making all of the money. Did you know that CocaCola? Now, do you know what the NIH is? It's the National Research thing for the United States. They are in charge of doing nutritional research in the United States, the government funded research. Coca-Cola by themselves spends 10 times in a year what the government spends on research, and that's just Coca-Cola. There are all of the other companies that are also spending all of this money. I'm reminded of a meme that I saw the other day that says I tried to follow the science, but the science just wasn't there. Then I followed the money, and that's where I found the science. People are being lied to on a daily basis, and it's become so ingrained that when we start to eat healthy, we're viewed as whack jobs, fringe people. We don't know what we're doing. We're going to kill ourselves. But if I could just get everybody to try a carnivore diet for 90 days and see what a difference it could make in their lives, that's why I keep doing what I do. I talk about this to anybody that will listen because it's a long uphill struggle because there's so much money behind the food industries and the sugar industries, the pharmaceutical companies. Oh, and congratulations. I would like to congratulate Pfizer on their 175th year as a corporation and not having managed to cure one single disease ever. Good job.
It's a pretty good strike rate, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Even the worst person at throwing a ball is going to hit the target one time if they're doing it for 175 years, right?
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's pretty. So, actually, when you talk about pharmaceutical companies, I think one of the problems which was brought up to me by someone I spoke to yesterday was that big pharma is very good at let's call it treating the problem that they see in front of them. So like, let's get your cholesterol down. Let's get your blood sugar under control. Something like that, right? But then not very good at, and doctors facilitate this, perhaps because the pharmaceutical companies are the ones that are controlling the education. But um, they never look at what's upstream of the actual issue. So rather than saying, let's get your blood sugar under control by giving you insulin, or, rather than saying, let's get your cholesterol under control by giving you statins, let's look at what's upstream. What's causing your cholesterol to be so high? What's causing your blood sugar to be so high? Oh, your blood sugar's high because you're consuming carbohydrate. Okay, well, why don't you stop consuming carbohydrate for a little while and let's see what happens? But there's no money in that, right?
Right. And, the best example that I've ever seen of this is I was watching a Dr. Eric Westman video. This has been a couple of years ago. So it's one of his older videos. But he said, we have all of these symptoms. If you think of it as a tree, high blood pressure is one of the branches on the tree. High blood sugar is one of the branches on the tree. And you can go on and on and on down the list of branches on the tree. And the pharmaceutical companies are very good at coming up with a pill or an injection that will treat the symptoms of that branch on the tree. But nobody wants to cut the tree down. In this particular instance, in the example he was using, he was saying that hyperinsulinemia is the tree trunk. And if you would just treat the hyperinsulinemia, all of the other problems would go away. But, there's no profit to be made in curing a patient. If they give you a pill that masks the symptoms so that you feel better, then they have done their job. And if there are side effects from the pill they gave you, well, guess what? They have another pill to take care of the side effects. And it goes on and on and on. That's how I ended up taking 13 pills in the morning and 9 at night, plus pain pills throughout the day. And now I take 0 prescription medications because I cut down the tree trunk with a carnivore diet.
Right. That's awesome. Getting off all the meds is fantastic. Um, so just back on your the heart disease and the triple bypass and so forth. Um, so you had you had basically no symptoms. Um,
Well,
oh,
I
go
won't
ahead.
say I had no symptoms. What happened is I was an over the road truck driver and I had just gotten my dream job. I was in off the road. I was working as a yard dog, which means I was being paid to move trailers around our shipping yard. I'd pick up a loaded trailer, move it to that dock, and then pick up an empty trailer and move it to that dock. Occasionally, I'd drive around town and pick up trailers from other places, but I stayed in town and went home every night, which is what every over the road truck driver dreams of, is going over the road, is to go home every night rather than being stuck out on the road. And I'd only been in this job for about 3 months. And I just started to notice that as I was cranking the legs of the trailers up and down and moving things around, that I was starting to get more winded than I was. And I just didn't feel right. So I went to the doctor and said, I just don't feel good. And he checked my blood pressure and it was elevated a little bit. He said, oh, well, it's probably your blood pressure doing this to you. So let's go ahead and change that up a little bit and come back and tell me how you feel in a couple of weeks. Well, I changed my blood pressure medicine and let it go for a couple of days. And I still just, it didn't change anything. So I went back to the doctor and said, oh gosh, I just don't feel right. Something's wrong. So he hooked me up to an in the office EKG machine and checked my heart. And he said, there's a little something there. I'm seeing something that I don't quite like. I don't believe it's anything super serious, but I'm going to make you an appointment, go over this afternoon and see a friend of mine. And that's how I got introduced to my cardiologist. So I went over to the cardiologist's office and he hooked me up to his big machine and all that stuff. And he looked at it and said, there's something there, but it doesn't look terrible. I'd like to get you into the hospital for an angiogram, which is where they inject you with dye and they run a wire up through your leg into your heart and they actually look at stuff. And he wanted to do it that day because it was a Friday. But he also said that, you need to have somebody to take you home because you're going to be under anesthesia and you can't drive, you can't go anywhere for a couple of days. And I said, well, can we do it next Friday? Because when I get out of your office here, I'm getting in the car and I'm driving down to Texas because Ohio State's playing in the Cotton Bowl. So I he said, "Oh, sure, no problem at all. Go watch your Ohio State Buckeyes play. It's no big deal. I'm sure it's nothing that serious. I'll see you next Friday." So he scheduled it for next Friday. So I went down to, I think it was the Cotton Bowl. Ohio State was playing in Texas, and we were playing in a bowl game. So I went down, watched Ohio State kick somebody's butt, and then went back to Nebraska. And I, of course, excuse me, was not awake because they put you under when you do the angiogram. But the friend of mine who took me to the hospital that day said that my doctor was white as a ghost when he came out of the angiogram. And that's saying something because he's a great big Indian guy. Normally, when you think about people from India, I know this is stereotyping and stereotyping is wrong, but 99% of the doctors you meet from India are these little tiny doctors that, barely weigh 110 pounds soaking wet. That's not Dr. Salfidi. He's 6'6", weighs about 340 pounds. He's a really big guy. He could probably pick Dr. Baker up. I mean, he's a really big guy. Not super fat. He's muscular. He's a big guy. But anyway, he was white as a ghost. And that's when we found out, I had 3 blockages, two at 100%, one at 99%. And I was just that close to dying. And he could not believe because even on my EKG and all the stuff that he did in his office, he could not believe how blocked up I was and still out walking around. Most people, when they get that plugged up, they're passed out in a corner somewhere waiting for the ambulance to come pick them up, and I'm still running off to football games.
Right. Yeah. And that you didn't feel anything, like you weren't in pain is
No,
quite
no,
a
I was
big
not in
thing.
pain. I just realized that I wasn't doing very well. It was
Mm,
starting to become more difficult to do my job.
right.
And that's where we were.
Yeah.
It you know,
S- So
I
the
didn't really have any symptoms except for a
yeah.
little shortness of breath and
Mm,
a little bit of fatigue.
mm. So when you discovered the ejection fraction being so low, um, and then as it started to improve, being on carnivore, um, did you notice, was is there any feeling that you noticed? Like any change? Is there like angina or something like that? Or
No, no, there's not really anything you can feel because my heart is beating stronger. Occasionally when I'm laying in bed, I can hear it because it's pumping more blood through like my neck arteries that run up the back of my neck that go right by your ear canal. I can occasionally, when I'm laying in bed, just before I drift off to sleep, especially if I'm on my side and have, one of my ears covered up with the pillow, I can kind of hear it going thump, thump, thump through my arteries, but not it's not anything that I you can feel. What I can tell you is that I've been walking for about 2 years now, every day outside, and about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, I started on a campaign that I want to try and sprint up this hill that I've been walking slowly up for the last 2 years. And I started pushing myself to walk faster and faster up this hill. And the first time I did it, I had a really hard time talking and making my videos while I was doing that. And I just did it again today. And if you go look at the video that I released today, you can tell that I'm still walking hard, but just the improvement I've seen in the last couple of weeks of pushing has been so much. But everything over the last 2 years has slowly gotten better. And it's like I'm reaching a tipping point where I've gone over the big crest and now I'm really ready to start pushing forward some more. I mean, I had somebody, on one of my videos make a comment about that they thought I was gaining weight. I'm not gaining weight. My neck, yes, I still have this turkey neck thing going on here, but that's just loose skin from all of the weight that I've lost. I have not gone back up in weight at all. I think I have gotten a little softer over the summer because I've been so busy working at the miniature golf course, taking care of storm damage, doing all of the other things that I've been doing. I won't say I stopped doing push ups, but it had been cut back to once or twice a week instead of religiously every other day. And since my schedule has lightened up, I have gotten back to doing all of the things I was doing before. And one of those things is walking farther and faster every day, too. So we'll see what happens. Maybe someday autophagy will catch up for me and get rid of some of the loose skin, and my turkey neck will go away, maybe by year 4 or 5 of carnivore. But it's not that I'm putting on weight. It's just I I will say that for this summer I stopped exercising quite as hard because I was doing so many other things, like working outside in the 95-degree heat under a tin roof 4 days a week.
yeah. So if I was to offer you $1 million, go back to a sad diet, permanently, what would you do? Would you take the
Oh,
money or?
oh, permanently? No way. I mean, if it was only for a week or two, sure, I could destroy my health for a couple of weeks. But no, there is nothing that will make me go back to a sad diet. And this is where I talk so much on my channel about your why. Why are you doing this? I don't believe that the nebulous, oh, I want to be a little healthier, or oh, I want to lose a little bit of weight. I don't think that's anywhere close to a strong enough why to keep you going every day pushing forward. You have to have a very specific why, whether it be you want to take your grandkids to the zoo, you want to be able to walk your dog around the block, you want to be able to walk upstairs without a limp from a stroke you had when you were a kid. Whatever that why is, you have to keep it right in front of you. I have several different whys, but the biggest one is still I remember how I felt the day before I started the carnivore diet. I was literally sitting around the house waiting to die. Everything is so much better today that there is no amount of money that would make me stop the carnivore diet. Even if you told me that the carnivore diet is going to kill me and I'm only going to live for another 3 weeks, I will take those 3 weeks feeling the way I feel today than another 3 or 4 or 10 years of how I felt 2 years ago.
Yeah. That's definitely the way I feel as well. When people say, "Oh, you're gonna kill yourself with that," like it's like, well, I'm gonna be happy and feel good while I'm killing myself, if that is actually the case, right?
Yeah, but you're not. You're not
Mm,
killing yourself. My heart results from my cardiologist show that. All of
mm,
the nonsense about how saturated fat is going to clog up your arteries, make your heart stop working, do all the bad things that it's going to do, then how do you explain the fact that mine got better? And the other big thing that people love to talk about is cholesterol. Cholesterol. Oh, your cholesterol is going through the roof. You're going to kill yourself. Statins are now $1 trillion industry. They've been pushing statins and lowering cholesterol, and there's even these new injections that can lower your LDL all the way down to single digits. If these drugs worked at all, why do cases of heart disease continue to rise while the use of statins and the other types of drugs also continue to rise? Shouldn't we at least see a leveling out of people dying of heart disease if all of these drugs are so doggone good for us? But we don't
mm.
see that. We don't see it at all. Heart
I,
disease continues to rise.
yeah, I think there's a lot of doctors out there that would say, "Oh, that's just a minor detail. Please look the other way. Don't think about those things, Bob."
Yeah, well, I was just reading an article this morning that was talking about how why the doctors push so hard to get you on, we'll just say certain drugs that start with a V. The reason they push that is because they get incentives. And if they get, you know, a certain percentage of 100 patients, they get a bonus. And if they get a certain percentage of 200 patients on those drugs, they get an even bigger bonus. So the reason your doctor is pushing you so hard to take whatever drug it is that he happens to be pushing that day, it's not because he's going to make an extra 50 or $60 off of you. It's because he's trying to reach his goals to make an extra 10, 20, even as much as $50,000 in bonus money from the pharmaceutical companies for reaching the percentage goals that his health organization has set for how many of his patients as a percentage need to be on these drugs for him to get that incentive.
Yeah, it's really comes down to it's just all about marketing and making money, right?
Yes, and I don't blame. There are a few doctors out there that I would look squint-eyed at and say you're probably doing this strictly for the money, and you know better. But for the most part, as Dr. Barry says, doctors are just dudes and chicks like you and I are. They're just people out there trying to do the best they can. I don't believe that most of the doctors out there are trying to do something wrong. They're just going on what they've been told because they have lives, they have a practice, they have to see patients. And, with the way modern medicine is today, it's not like the doctor gets to come in and sit down and chat with you for a half hour or 45 minutes. He's got like 11 and a half minutes to spend in the room with you before he has to go on to the next room and take care of the next patient. That's just the state of medical care. He's busy all day long. He doesn't have time to sit down and watch YouTube videos and read research papers and do all of the studying that you and I have done over the last couple of years, Dave. So he just has to go by what he's being told. And a pharmaceutical rep comes in and says, hey, here's the latest version of our statin. And these are the numbers that we've seen from it. And if you get, 45% of your patients to switch over to this drug, I'll take you out to a really nice steak dinner or whatever it happens to be. And the doctor doesn't know that the stats that they're giving him are adjusted, they're manipulated. There's a big difference between relative and actual. Because if I were to tell you, let's just say, oh, here's my lens cap, Dave. If you buy this lens cap from me, you will live 38% longer. You're likely to send me $5 for this lens cap. But if you dig into the numbers and discover that the difference between owning the lens cap and not owning the lens cap is a difference between 0.1% and 0.5%, which is 38% more likely to live longer. But if I said, oh, well, you can improve your chances of living by 0.3%, if you buy this lens cap, you're going to go, no, no, I don't think I need that lens cap. And that's the difference between actual statistics and relative statistics. And that's where they manage to fudge the numbers. They're not actually lying to you when they tell you that their studies show a 38% increase in bad outcomes or better outcomes or whatever it is. But if you look at the actual numbers, would you really buy and take this lens cap knowing that there are 30 side effects that could come with this lens cap? But hey, those side effects are minor in compared to the fact that it could make you live 38% longer, as opposed to you're not so willing to take the risks of all those side effects if you realize it's only a 0.3% increase. I hope what I said there makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And I, for me, I find that the fact that this is not disclosed very, very clearly is like it just why can they get away with that? So if I was, for example, the CEO of Coca-Cola and I said, okay, let's do a marketing campaign, and we've done some tests, and we find that people that drink Coca-Cola versus people that don't, relatively, there's a 38% increase in IQ, right? But actually, as absolute numbers, it's a 0.1% increase, right? So it's like we were just lucky the day we did the test or whatever, or the month long test we did. But if I put an ad out like that saying if you drink Coca-Cola, you can have a 38% increase in IQ, there'd be government agencies all over Coca-Cola going, you cannot say this. There'd be lawsuits out the wazoo. Like, how do pharmaceutical companies get away with brushing this under the carpet?
Let me ask you a couple of questions, Dave. Who's the biggest donor to the American Heart Association? Pharmaceutical companies. Who's the biggest donor to the American Diabetes Association? Pharmaceutical companies. Who's one of the biggest donors to a lot of political campaigns? Pharmaceutical companies. That's how they get away with it. Because if you're not, the old adage of you're not going to bite the hand that feeds you. I want to give one more quick example about statistics here, because my brother, who I don't speak to very often because we are on differing sides of the political aisle, and he thinks I'm a really evil person, but he has a PhD in economics games theory. Now, what all that means is I say he has a degree in poker because he sat on a riverboat gambling for 6 months, then wrote his dissertation about it. But that's neither here nor there. He once did a statistical breakdown because here in the States, there's always this argument about which football conference is better, the Big Ten or the SEC. So he sat down and spent weeks poring over statistics from who they played, who everybody played, and he went through all of the stuff. And he laid out his statistics and said, this is just another example of everything that I can do as a person that knows how to manipulate statistics. If somebody from the Big Ten wants to sponsor this study, I can without a doubt prove that the Big Ten is better than the SEC. But if the SEC wants to buy my study, I can prove without a doubt that the SEC is better than the Big Ten. And that's the way statistics works. I forget who it was that said it, but they said that there are three types of lies in the world. There are lies, there's damn lies, and there's statistics. And that's how they get away with it.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. So on Carnivore, if you've got a friend that comes to you and says, look, I want to get started with Carnivore, what should I do? What advice would you give them?
Well, the first thing I say, I have a very specific little plan that I like to encourage people to do. I'd say, first of all, go to my YouTube channel and watch all 700 of my videos. That's a good place to start. But barring that, the first thing you have to do is you have to decide that you want to do it. You have to come up with your why. Why do you want to do this? Then start by throwing away all of the processed foods in your house. Get rid of all the bags, boxes, packages. And just if you can kill it or grow it or pick it, start there. Only eat those things. And then slowly, over the course of 4 to 6 weeks, transition away from the fruits and the vegetables until you're eating only animal products. You have to get them out of your house because if let's say you like pretzels. If pretzels are your snack of choice, you cannot have a bag of pretzels in the house and say, well, I'm just not going to eat those. You have to throw them away because you may still get a craving for pretzels, but knowing that you have to get dressed, put on your shoes, go out to the car, drive to the store, buy a bag of pretzels, bring them home, bring them into the house, and then eat them, that's a lot of trouble to go to. Where it's like, well, okay, maybe I will just have another couple of hamburger patties rather than go through all of that. But the very first thing you have to do is get all of the processed junk out of your house and eat only whole foods. Then the next thing you have to throw away are the vegetable seed oils. Vegetable seed oils are engine lubricant. That was their very first job when they were invented. They were invented as engine lubricant. And then some guy came up with a process to make them smell good and make them clean. And I believe you even have a video on your channel from about a year and a half ago that goes through the process of how vegetable seed oils are made. If people have not seen that, I suggest they go back and watch that. And perhaps Dave will even put a card up in the corner of this video about right here now to link you to that video. I don't know if he's going to do that. He may find it and link it down in the description. But seed oils are toxic. There's no need to have seed oils in your diet because, as I talked about earlier, there's nothing wrong with saturated fat in your diet. Regardless of what you've been told all of these years, saturated fats are what our body is designed to run on. My improvements in heart health show that. So throw out all the processed crap, throw out all the junk food, get rid of the seed oils, slowly transition. And then once you've made the transition, give it a full 90 days. It can be hard. You're probably going to have some bathroom issues even after the slow transition. You're going to have a few days of feeling lethargic, but you've got to give it a full 90 days to see how you feel. And if you don't feel noticeably better in 90 days, then by all means go back to eating whatever crap you want to eat. But I have not found a single person that gave it a full 90 days that did not go, wow, this is absolutely amazing. And that's how I would tell people to get started.
Very nice. So, how can people find you on YouTube, and what kind of videos have you got for them?
Well, I'm on YouTube at Semi Retired Bob. I've just recently changed my name to Semi Retired Bob Off Grid Carnivore because I'm getting ready to move down to Texas. Right now, all of my videos talk about the carnivore diet, all things related to the carnivore diet, miscellaneous odds and ends. I do have, over the last week and a half, I've been adding in some off grid topics, but they're very short. About 5 to 10 minutes of my videos, I'll talk about an off grid topic, and then I talk about carnivore. And most of my videos are just me holding my phone, walking around the neighborhood. And if you go all the way back to where I started, you'll find that that first walking video that I did was about 3.5 minutes long. It was all I could do to get down to the corner and back. And now I'm walking for miles at a time. And it's that's what kind of video you're going to find. You can find me on YouTube at Semi Retired Bob. I've got a free Facebook group at Semi Retired Bob. I do have an Instagram and an X account. Um, I hardly ever use them. If you want to find me there, you can. But YouTube is my main thrust. I have recently started um, mirroring my videos on another site that starts with an R and rhymes with tumble. Um, and I believe Dave has some videos out there as well, but I don't want to mention the actual name of it on this particular platform, but you can find me there as well.
Nice. So I'll link to those below. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience and giving us an update on how things are going, Bob. Really appreciate your time.
I really appreciate you having me on, Dave. You know, anytime I can get a chance to get in front of people and tell them about the carnivore diet. That's what I need to do. People say that sometimes I sound like a religious fanatic when I talk about the carnivore diet. Well, I kind of am, because I believe this can help absolutely everything. You know, we get questions all the time. Well, I have this condition. Will carnivore help with that? I can't say yes or no. It's definitely going to help with your specific condition. But doesn't it make sense that if carnivore is so healing to the human body, it can't help but make whatever condition you have just a little bit better. It may not specifically heal that condition, but it will help. And that's why I keep doing what I do. I talk about it as often as I can with anybody that will listen, because this is important. We're up against a huge machine out there that makes large amounts of money on selling you processed foods. And that's why I keep coming on to people's channels and talking and making my own videos. And thank you, Dave, for having me, to giving me another chance to come out here and talk to your audience and say, if you haven't started the carnivore diet yet, what are you waiting on?